Welcome back to Two Who's Review. I'm Alex,
I'm Fitz.
and today, well, now that you've laughed at during your actual intro, but that's definitely staying in. We're looking at the Krotons, which is a second Doctor story, first one on this channel.
Yep.
It's from 1968 into 1969.
Mm-hmm.
It's one of the last second Doctor stories, I think. Yeah, fourth last.
Yeah.
It's an interesting one.
It is. It's a very classic Who sort of story because I feel like the basic plot and even some of the themes of this group of people that have been misled by these aliens and they're forced to basically be slaves, I guess. I feel like that's been done a lot in Doctor Who and even a lot of science fiction for that matter.
Yeah.
And the fact that the Doctor kind of comes in and helps sort of saves the day and helps them rise up. Again, I feel like I've seen that a number of times in Doctor Who. So you could argue it's not like super special, unique, or boundary pushing, but I think overall it does a pretty good job. I found myself enjoying it quite a bit, and it got better as it went along. In my view, I must say.
Well, actually, interestingly,
hmm.
I'm reading here on the production side of things. This episode wasn't originally a Doctor Who episode.
Huh.
It was pitched to the BBC as a standalone science fiction serial in 1965. It was suggested at the time that they pitched it to Doctor Who. The writer Robert Holmes did so. It didn't really go much further, but then later Terrance Dicks was clearing a backlog and found the script and decided to develop it.
Yeah. I think I was reading a bit about it, and I think I've forgotten that was a part of it. I read somewhere that the Krotons, I think, were meant to replace the Daleks as like the major villain, and I'm like, not sure what the plan was there, but that didn't end up happening.
Was it the Krotons wanted to become
like the new big villain?
The new Daleks kind of thing.
Yeah, basically.
Is this the only appearance of the Krotons?
Yeah, I think because I think I read what happened was I'm absolutely gonna kick myself for not remembering. I'm gonna look it up. The guy who created the Daleks, it's
a Terry Nation.
Terry Nation, thank you. I think I read that what he was trying to do. I think he wanted to take the property of the Daleks away from the BBC because he was trying to make his own TV show in America. I think he was trying to sell it, but that fell through. I think in the end.
I see.
Which is why they continue to use it. But I think this was the Krotons. I think were meant to be like a replacement or a new villain.
Sure.
Which again didn't really end up working because they're only in this episode. But yeah, another bit of trivia that I read about the Krotons, the costumes, when they were built, the scale of them wasn't worked out quite properly. So in order to make it so that the actors playing them could move, that's why they have the weird little sort of rubber skirts below them, which look a little odd. But yeah, I don't know whether they were meant to have like wheels down the bottom of them and not have them like walking the way they do, but yeah, that's just something I read, which is kind of interesting.
I guess let's do the timescales discussion first of all. 116 people have voted, and they say that this episode has a 6.1 average rating.
I might put it a bit higher than that, but
yeah, it's confusing. I said at the end of the last episode that I don't know how I feel about this episode yet. I still don't. I'm not sure if that 6.1 rating is where I'd fall or not. I think my instinct is to go higher, but I don't. It's going to be an interesting discussion because, like, I watched it this morning, and like I was invested and I was entertained, but I was also annoyed at parts. So I don't know.
Yeah,
it's probably the only time I haven't gone into one of these with a clear idea of what I thought about the episode, which is again, it's going to make this really interesting moving forward.
Yeah.
It has a 5.9 for plot,
I want to say higher because the plot it gets, I think, quite a bit more interesting as the story goes along. But I wonder, it's one of those stories, and you could probably say this for maybe a fair bit of Classic Who, but I feel like there are plot holes that I'm not noticing or that I've been ignoring. So maybe there's something there that I'm not picking up on. We'll obviously get into it, but I do want to say it's higher than that. So yeah.
So it has a 6.6 for acting.
Yeah. I mean, here's the funny thing: the main cast are all really good.
Yep.
Wendy Padbury, Fraser Hines, and Patrick Troughton. By the way, and we'll talk about this now. I love his performance.
I do too.
I think it's fantastic, and I think it's a testament to his performance, but also the sort of the way the character is written and what the show was trying to do, that they even managed to pull off his character at all. Because this idea of having a character come back, but as basically a totally different person, maybe I'm missing something, maybe I'm forgetting something. I really cannot think of any other instance in fiction before Doctor Who that did something like that. Certainly not in television.
Yeah.
So the fact that they were willing to take that risk at all and pull it off as well as they did is admirable and thoroughly enjoyable, because I think I love Patrick Troughton's performance, because he embodies the sort of the best and the worst qualities of the Doctor as a person, because he's very compassionate and he's wise and he's smart and he's helping to save the day, but he's also just such a kind of an egotistical, selfish, childish little shit at times. And it is really fun watching those moments for me. And I think it's a lot of it is sold because of Patrick Troughton's performance. So, for example, there's one bit that I really liked near the end when he and Zoe are with the Gons, and he's basically just trying to stall. And he's doing this really silly stuff. It's like, oh, you want to stand here, Zoe? Okay, well, I'll stand over here then, and then we'll stand. The thing is, the reason why I like that, especially with the performance, is I really can't imagine Hartnell doing something like that.
No.
Like, even the way that scene's written, like, if that was Hartnell, they would have had to change the way that scene's written. I can't imagine, like, because here's the thing, as we've discussed with the Time Meddler, Hartnell clearly had a sense of humor, and the writers were able to tap into that, but it's very different to the way it's expressed with Troughton, so...
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of the side characters in this are fine. Some of them not so much.
the writing and the acting with the side characters, it's very 60s Doctor Who, yeah?
Yeah.
It's like, we cannot disobey the Gons, or we will be destroyed. We must obey. So it's again, it's such a 60s Doctor Who thing to do. I love it for that reason. It's so charming and funny and just... look, again, it's one of those things where if a modern audience looks at this and finds, I can't, like, take this seriously, I understand it, but I can't not fall in love with it, yeah? Like, this is one of the reasons why I love Classic Who. It is very melodramatic, and the characters are very big, and the performances are very mannered, and it's just, I just kind of love it every time I watch it. The curious thing is, though, even though the second Doctor is being quite melodramatic, because it's true here, but it's also true in definitely true in other Doctor Who episodes, he's being quite over the top and weird and eccentric, but because the performance, I think, is so authentic, he actually comes across as more realistic than any of the side characters do, which is very curious.
Yeah, it's strange. I think that's we just come to accept that the Doctor is a bit odd at times.
Yeah. I love, oh my god, I love the little sayings and some of the mannerisms he's got. Like when he says, when they're near the door and he's just like, great jumping gobstoppers.
Oh yeah.
Or he says, oh my giddy aunt, which he said, that's a catchphrase of Pat Troughton's Doctor. So it's just those moments which you can kind of see why they chose him to replace Hartnell, because he is at once so different to Hartnell's Doctor, but he's still tapping into the qualities that kind of make the Doctor, and he's really selling it. Like, he's such a fun character to just watch zip around and doing all his wacky stuff. And he really the dynamic he has with the other characters, I think, also works really well. Whether he's being comedic or dramatic. So again, you can see why they chose him because I just love watching him on screen, being this weird little manic little goblin person that I can't get enough of it. It's just fantastic stuff.
It has a 6 for effects.
Um,
I think that for the time, this is very good.
yeah, actually, I have to say, like, again, very 60s Doctor Who, but what they're trying to do, they keep most of the effects to sort of a minimum anyway, and even when they show them, they actually work pretty well. I mean, like, even if they've got these big vats of the acid, it's, it obviously basically looks like just pots with dry ice put in them, but even that looks quite convincing. The alien world that they're on, and I don't know where they were filming, whether it was in, the quarry, but it does look like an alien world. It looks like quite a kind of desolate, hostile environment, so that's really great. The Krotons themselves, again, apart from the weird sort of leather rubber skirt thing, whatever it is, which they don't show a lot of anyway, they themselves are pretty good. The fact that in the end they have these gigantic crystals spinning around really fast on top of the bodies is pretty impressive.
Yeah, very impressive, especially for the time.
Yeah, absolutely. And the best part, and we've even raised this issue before, the scenes of the structures dissolving in the acid looks pretty damn convincing.
Yeah, I agree.
Even, I think, by modern standards, it's like the bit in the Sea Devils when the door was melting, and we're like, that looks impressive even by modern standards. So I don't know what technique they were using, but it looks really good.
Yeah, I mean, so it doesn't do itself any favors when one of the first non-regular shots that they do is when the TARDIS crew are looking down at the city, and it's very clearly just some rocks in the sand.
Yeah, and it's a miniature.
It's a miniature, but it's not a very impressive one. It's not very great, but apart from that, it's fine.
Yeah, and I can vaguely accept that. I can think, okay, well, wacky Doctor Who style, wacky Doctor Who city. Sure, I can. Excuse me. I can dig that. But yeah, generally speaking, again, especially for the time, there's not really much that bothers me because it's kind of such a character-driven thing. And the fact that they only have 2 Krotons, they're making it work. They're making the low budget kind of sort of work to their benefit, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's a replay value of 5.6.
I'd put it a bit higher. I liked it basically about as much the second time.
I can kind of see why it's rated that low though.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure. A lot of episodes you get more and more out of them on repeat viewings. This one, I'm not sure that you would.
Mm-hmm.
It kind of, especially because doesn't really have that much to say, and it is kind of a basic-ish sci-fi romp. It is kind of like you've seen one, you've seen them all, you've seen this one.
Yeah, it's a Doctor Who, it's a classic Doctor Who story. Yeah, this is kind of what you expect, and some of the themes, are pretty serious. You got these people that are basically enslaved to the Krotons, and you got the Doctor coming in and saving the day, which, frankly, and you know what, I know we've said it before, and I know we've, sort of verbally bashed Chibnall's writing enough at this point, but, this is, at least it's trying to say something interesting here, and at least there's some catharsis, Chibnall's not even trying to really do that in a lot of his episodes, and we've even, I think it was JXI who said that one of the benefits of the Doctor just as a character and as a person is that, they're on the side of the little guy. They want to, protect those who, aren't privileged, and they want to save, worlds, but, the Doctor just kind of abandons that a little bit in a lot of Chibnall episodes. But even then, though, if we take it back to Boomtown, at least it's with the themes that they're expressing in the Krotons, at least they're not being wishy-washy about it.
Yeah.
At least they're taking some kind of a stand here and saying something dramatically effective with it. So, yeah. Beyond that, though, some of the things I'll say, I liked some of the interactions between the Doctor and his companions. The fact that Oh god, the fact that he just kind of bullies Jamie a bit, and he does it in other episodes as well. And I know it's kind of hard to sort of put this all into perspective because some of these episodes, are missing, but I think generally there's a pattern of Jamie bullying, the Doctor bullying Jamie, excuse me. And like the fact that they say, oh yeah, no, like he's a lower intelligent being, I'm like, Jesus Christ, man, that's a little shitty. But that even then it kind of gets interesting because the Krotons simply assume, oh, his mind is weak, we don't need to take him seriously. But he's the one who's able to escape. He kind of,
Yeah.
damages the Krotons, and he leaves, and he's actually trying to help the Doctor, and he's doing all this stuff. And I actually kind of like that because, and I don't know, maybe I'm reading a bit too much into it, but it does kind of get back to what I've said about Doctor Who being a broadly progressive show even in the 60s. It's like, when people say, again, here's our regular segment of the week, when people say, oh, it only got political in, with Chibnall, no, that's just not true, because even here in this episode, which, as you say, I don't know if I'd go so far as to say that it's, like, super average, but it's not doing anything, like, super, wacky or boundary pushing by Doctor Who standards. But even here, like, that bit with Jamie, what I think it's saying is that that's the big flaw in the worldview of the privileged, especially when they're considering the non-privileged. They don't take them seriously. They don't think, oh, this person can't possibly be a threat. We've assessed them, and they're not a problem. But egg on their face. That's their problem, and I think it's kind of cool that Doctor Who, even in a story like this, is exploring it. So,
like, imagine this episode being released today, and like, what? Zoe, a woman, has mental power comparable to the Doctor?
Well, that's the thing. Well, that's the thing. I was going to say it, actually, even when watching him, like, yeah, this is obviously something we're going to be discussing. And here's the thing. You could make the argument that the way they frame that issue, yeah, maybe they could have done it a bit better. And if they had it in a modern episode, yeah, maybe they would have done it a bit differently. Because the Doctor's being really shitty towards Zoe, and from what I've read, that's something like they have a consistent competition because the Doctor's gets all bitchy about the fact that, oh yeah, someone's more intelligent than me, a woman more intelligent than me, oh harumph, so you could argue in that way it's a little bit sort of ethically frustrating. And again, it just goes back to the thing that I've said before about Classic Who. If you're a modern audience member and you're looking at these moments and you're saying, oh, I'm not sure how I feel about those fits, they're a bit too much for me, I can understand it. I'm willing to sort of, again, not look past it, but sort of forgive it. But I will say this, even on this issue, even if you can say that, oh, well, they could have been doing more, they could have been doing more to sort of needle the Doctor's, sexism, I suppose. That may be true, but even here you can see, again, there's an attempt here to have some sort of progressive lens on this issue, because it's shown that, actually, yeah, Doctor, this woman is actually smarter than you.
Yeah.
Get over it.
You still know more
you know what
about
I mean?
You still have more knowledge, but that's because you're you're a Time Lord. You see all the time.
And even then,
when it comes to basic mathematics, you still got to put some mental prowess behind it.
Yeah, like, and again, like, like, it's kind of good that she shows him, yeah, I'm smart too, Doctor. Again, the Doctor needs to grow up.
Yeah.
Basically. So that's kind of neat that they're at least attempting to do this. And again, as I've said, this just puts the lie that to the idea that
it's only
Doctor
woke
Who,
now.
Yeah, it's, again, as I've said, there are obviously issues in Classic Who in terms of representation that any modern audience, when they look at them, are going to think, wow, that's actually kind of icky. There's there's racism and sexism in it. Yeah, but that's just because that's when it was made. And again, if you're a modern audience and think, oh, this is a bit much, fair enough. But these moments clearly show that at its core, it is and always has been a basically progressive show. So the idea that it hasn't, that it only became progressive recently is ridiculous. The idea that it hasn't always been progressive is even more ridiculous, and the idea that it's never been political before Chibnall is utterly absurd.
Yep.
So, I apologize, audience, if that got a bit ranty there, but I really thought that was just important to get that out of the way. So, yeah, anyway.
One person out of 54 says this story requires a previous, and that person is wrong.
Yeah, yeah.
Absolutely.
Again, it's tough because...
incredibly isolated episode.
Yeah. And even, like, with the companions... I looked this up. So the Doctor meets Jamie in the Scottish Highlands, unsurprisingly, in a story called The Highlanders. That episode, I think, might be completely missing. And then he meets Zoe, who's from I read, and no one's quite 100% sure, but it's implied that she's from the late 21st century. So he meets her on a space station. I think it's the
Wheel in Space.
The Wheel in Space, yeah, which has only 3 remaining episodes, which is unfortunate. So yeah, even then, in terms of the character dynamics, so like you get a pretty good idea, and they actually, I think, in terms of the basic drama between them, they do a pretty good job of showing who these characters are and how they relate to each other. But like, you'd still have a lot of questions about who these characters are and where they'd come from.
I had a good enough idea by the end of it, and that's not being particularly familiar with either Jamie or Zoe. So it's a good episode on that front. Like it understands its characters and it uses them well.
Yeah.
Krotons is the 4th lowest rated second Doctor story.
Again, it is a bit tough because a lot of these episodes are missing. Although I have listened to the audio of both Power of the Daleks and Evil of the Daleks, which was both fantastic.
Those are both very highly rated episodes.
Yep, that's unsurprising. But yeah, where does this, like, just put it into context for me? Where does this fit in? Like, I know, like 4th lowest, but which is before and after?
Let's see. So, I'll give you the bottom 5 in order from 5th lowest to lowest. So it goes The Wheel in Space, The Krotons, The Underwater Menace, The Dominators, and The Space Pirates.
It's been ages since I've seen The Dominators, but I guess so. That was a... Have you ever seen or heard anything about The Dominators? Have you ever seen what...
The only concept I have of The Dominators is from reading reviews of The Krotons and people saying how it reminded them of The Dominators.
But have you seen what the main monster is in that? Have you seen the Quarks?
No, I'll give it a look now.
They're something else. They are a Doctor Who monster, let's put it that way. They're a very, very 60s British design. Even just looking up images of them,
okay.
Yeah, there's something else.
Yeah.
Little boxes with short little legs.
Little robots.
Crystal things sticking out of their heads. And 2 little arms that only fold like one way that come out and shoot, I think it's like small bullets. And they're the minions that the Dominators use to dominate, I guess.
Yeah.
We will have to look at that story at some point. And I think that's a 5-part story. So, yeah, we'll have to definitely look at that at some point. But anyway, that's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about the Krotons.
And here's the synopsis of the Krotons. The TARDIS arrives on the unnamed planet of the Gonds, who are ruled and taught in a form of self-perpetuating slavery by the alien Krotons, crystalline beings whose ship, the Dynatrope, crash-landed there thousands of years ago after being damaged in a space battle. The Krotons are at present in suspended animation in a crystalline slurry form, awaiting a time when they can be reconstituted by absorption of mental energy. Periodically, the 2 most brilliant Gond students are received into the Dynatrope, apparently to become companions of the Krotons, but in truth to have their mental energy drained, after which they are killed. When the Doctor and Zoe take the students' test, their mental power is sufficient to reanimate the Krotons. The Doctor discovers that their life system is based on cerulean acid, and with the help of the Gond scientist Beta, he is then able to destroy them and their ship using an impure form of sulfuric acid.
Yeah, I mean, that is what it is.
It is, yeah. And for a lot of it, you're sort of left in the dark as to what the Krotons' main goal is.
Yeah,
kind of
that's
sets it sets you
true.
up. It sets you up with that pretty early on. You know, the Krotons are the overlords of the Gons. They control what the Gons learn. Uh, you know, it seems like their technology is in some way meant to keep the Gons submissive to the Krotons' rule, to the point where even when they know that the Krotons are using them, they still can't disobey a direct order, which is kind of interesting in a weird way. Like when both Zoe and the Doctor take the Krotons test, they both have a moment of, man, aren't the Krotons great? And then
Mm.
sort of snap themselves out of
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
We learn that their ship got damaged and they harvest mental energy and are waiting for two Gons with a sufficient enough mental prowess to help pilot their ship out from away from the planet.
Yeah.
They also the way they teach the Gons with their little learning machines. It's a way of making sure that they get to the right level of intelligence to help them, but not so intelligent that they realize what's going on. You know, it's all very 1984-ish in a weird way.
Yeah.
It does leave you to wonder how they set this all up in the first place.
Mm.
Did they go into that? So they set it up and then went into suspended animation, but they get reanimated by the Doctor and Zoe. I think is that what a lot of this is like kind of
yeah. I think they do say that they do get. Oh no, I think they said they activated the Dynatrope with Zoe and the Doctor's.
That's what I assumed. That's what I assumed it was as well. But according to this, it was the Krotons themselves that got reanimated.
Right.
I don't know if that's true though, because I think we've seen them before that point.
I don't think so. I mean, you hear their voices, but that could have easily just been maybe a recording, or maybe. I don't know. I don't think.
It can't have been right, because the recording says your friend has been killed. Leave the learning chamber, or whatever it is.
That's true.
So the BBC.co.uk synopsis is wrong.
I think so. Again, maybe that's kind of a testament to maybe the plot isn't at least as clear as I had originally thought about it. I noticed that it does this thing, and I think it's probably been done a fair bit with Doctor Who, where there's a lot of interesting setup and a little bit of mystery here and there. And then, like, in the end, they take care of a lot of exposition quite quickly, because the Gons are basically just explaining their plan, and the Doctor, you know, he's stalling for time, but he's basically saying, yeah, tell me everything about your plan, Krotons, what's happening here. And the funny thing is, they actually integrate that, I think, surprisingly well into the plot. It's not as jarring as other examples I think I've seen even in Doctor Who's. So
yeah,
at least because it helps, because it is quite a funny scene. Because again, the Doctor's stalling for time, and you get to see Pat Troughton's wacky performance. So in that sense, it does kind of work. But I now realize, again, especially if you're a modern, even a modern Doctor Who fan, or certainly if you're not a Doctor Who fan and you just watch this, that's going to look a little odd, I suspect.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's kind of how it is.
I mean, the synopsis that I just read out completely overlooks the Gond rebellion that happens part of the way through.
It does.
One of the Gonds has the classic thing where you've seen so many times again, where one person isn't chuffed with how the leader is handling things and is using this Kroton situation as an excuse to rebel, establish themselves as the leader, go to war, or maybe even not, just to save their own skin.
Yeah.
Like, the whole, that character, I forget their name, they're so cliched. You've seen them, you've seen one of them, you've seen all of them, there's no interesting spin here.
Yeah. They've done it before. They would do it again with Doctor Who and the Silurians and do it much better.
And that whole thing was very boring to me.
Yeah, I can understand why, and I'm now actually starting to try and sort of piece this whole thing together, but how much impact did that have on the plot? I mean, again, there's that bit where I think, they're all getting taken away from the ship, and Jamie's like, oh no, I've got to save them, and Cyrus is like, oh wait, but I've got the acid, and then... But you know what I mean? I'm not sure.
The only thing that the rebellion serves for the main plot is to get the Doctor and Zoe back into the Dynatrope. Because they do that thing where it's like, give us the high intelligence, and then we'll leave and
yeah, that's right. We'll leave and peruse them in 15 minutes.
But the rebellion was happening before then, and it's Cyrus's plan that sort of makes things go a bit awry before that point. It's nothing that the rebellion was doing. They weren't really rebelling at all. They were just saying, get me some slings and fireballs or whatever they were planning to do to beat some robots into submission. It's not like their actions cause things to get worse. So, I mean, in the end, you could have just had it be. You didn't have to have this weird militia forming. You could have just had this one person being like, "Okay, yeah, I'll get these people if it'll get you to leave. I'll save my own skin this way," like a cowardice kind of thing, as opposed to a play for political power. Didn't really serve a purpose. I mean, what I am happy about is that it didn't lead to any situations of one of the Gons being like, "Haha, I've been working with the Krotons the whole time."
Yeah.
At the very least, when they find out about the fact that people have been dying in order to appease the Krotons, none of the Gons are still on their side. They're all pretty actively against them at that point, which is refreshing. There's no situation of like, "No, you're lying. The Gons are our friends."
Yeah. Again, because that's something which, and I'm sure if we had enough time, we'd be able to find many, many specific examples, but I feel like that's a trope I've seen in Doctor Who over and over and over, especially in Classic Who.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think you're right to point out that it's good they didn't go with that route. But yeah, it is quite curious. As I said, it gets better as it goes on. I really quite like the fact that the Doctor's teaching them some chemistry, and they're all sort of rebelling against the Krotons, and that it gets like fairly tense because they realize the planet could basically explode.
Yeah.
And then when the Doctor's actually again with Zoe with the Krotons trying to figure out how to destroy them, that gets really interesting. And the fact that they use the acid and it kind of fries their circuits from the inside out is quite fun as well. But it's, I don't know, I think, as I said before, I don't want to say this is like an average Doctor Who episode, but it kind of is.
It really is. Like, I don't...
Yeah.
We've just been talking about how it doesn't do a lot of things that a lot of other Doctor Who episodes do, but I mean, even now, it's left such a little impression on me. I think I liked it. I don't think I walked away being like, well, that was a waste of my time.
Yeah. There's nothing
real quick,
super.
They established that if the Dinotrope overloads, it'll take the planet with it.
Yeah.
Is that idea abandoned, or is it the fact that they melted the ship with the sulfuric acid? Is that what took care of that issue?
I think that was the idea. The fact that the Gons were stopped from the Krotons were stopped from sort of executing that whole plan. I think that's what stopped it in the end.
Because I think they made it clear that if a certain amount of time elapsed, the Dinotrope would explode and take the planet with it. For a moment, I was worried that the episode was going to go, well, we've destroyed the Krotons, and that's enough. The Dinotrope's now fine as well. But, I mean, when we see the people pouring the acid, I mean, this is the part of the episode that got very unclear to me. That thing that we saw melting, was that the Dinotrope, or was that just a thing?
I think that was the Dinotrope. I think it was at least, and granted, they might have needed to make this clearer.
So when the Gons were referring to it as the machine, they're talking about the Dinotrope there, right? Not the learning machines.
Yeah, no, I think the machine. I think it's the Dinotrope.
Okay.
It's whatever the Krotons are in.
Yeah.
Which is the Dinotrope. So I think that's what they're referring to. The learning machines are separate little things. So
that was where I was getting very confused. Unfortunately, it's one of the limitations of this era. When they show external shots of a ship melting, it doesn't always look like what you imagined it would from the inside.
Yeah.
So it was kind of, for a long time, I was kind of lost there.
Yeah, I think if you're going to in order to make it clear that it's the ship, you kind of have to have a bigger budget with a clearer shot of the ship dissolving or exploding or whatever as it may be.
Yeah.
So this episode, the direction kind of interested me. It's directed by David Maloney, who I think directed Genesis of the Daleks. I am just gonna quickly look that
I'll look
up.
that up if you want to continue talking.
Oh yeah, thank you. Yeah. So he does some interesting direction. He did in Genesis of the Daleks, but even here, and I actually really did enjoy the really kind of wacky montage when it's Zoe and the Doctor sitting in the two chairs trapped under the beam, and they've got these really strange, not just wide angle but fish angle lenses
Oh
of
yeah, that was really cool.
there's the extreme close-ups of their faces, and you also see weird montages of like lights flashing, and then there's a shot of this weird sort of honeycomb grid thing, which you assume is the ship or something.
Mm. Yes,
And
I've
I
got
think
David Maloney's pedigree here.
Hmm.
You're right. He did direct Genesis of the Daleks.
Yeah.
He also directed Deadly Assassin from a couple weeks ago.
Huh.
Which is interesting. But his pedigree doesn't end there. He also directed the War Games.
Right.
And the Mind Robber. I think all of which, they're all pretty highly regarded episodes.
Yeah, highly regarded second Doctor stories.
Yeah, so he's got a few really solid episodes under his belt.
And yeah, it's just those small details that I really enjoy. The reason why I wanted to bring it up, though, is because that shot of the weird honeycomb grid later on when the Dynatrope thing is dissolving, like they're showing that little grid thing dissolving, and I don't know, maybe that's meant to be a visual indication that, oh, it's the ship, it's the machine that's dissolving itself, so as opposed to the Krotons, which you can, like, they have a shot of their diamond heads melting from the inside out, so yes, I think the point is it was like the Dynatrope they were trying to dissolve there.
Yeah. I mean, what else is there to even, like... I know we've barely discussed it, but what...
Yeah.
What is there to say?
It's so strange, because, like, again, there's nothing in this story that really, like, super bothers me. I can't find any, like, massive plot holes, and there's nothing really terrible with the performances or the emotional catharsis that they're trying to achieve. Like, it all works, and again, I quite like the ending. It is quite cathartic, and I will say, Cyrus's sort of sacrifice when he gets shot, like that actually did resonate with me quite a bit. I thought, oh, that's quite sad.
I really liked Cyrus as a character.
Yeah,
you could tell he was one of those, like, he was one of those higher ups that's like, this is the way it's always been, but he sort of subverts that by being, like, genuinely open
he's got that care. Like, he is the sort of paternal figure, not just for Thara, but kind of for all of them, and he's trying to look after his people, and there's an honor there.
And even when he's like, well, I'm sorry, Zoe and the Doctor, but your names have been called out by the Krotons, you gotta go into the machine. He's not doing it out of any, like, because this is the way of the law and it's tradition and blah, blah. He's doing it out of, well, they'll get suspicious.
And they'll kill us all.
Yeah, they'll kill us all. Like, you can tell it's genuine, like...
Yeah.
And, like, there's a genuine compassion and empathy behind that character. And even at the beginning, I was really worried. I forget the character's name that I think is romantically entangled with Vanna. I forget that guy. The guy's name, rather. But at the start, you think he's going to be this, like, you can't go because I love her, but it's unrequited kind of thing. But it does end up being like, no, they do care for each other, but he's just genuinely worried for her because he's cottoned on to the fact that something's tricky about this situation. He goes through quite a journey in the episode. Like he's one of the big proponents of, we have to war the Krotons. But he does sort of come around to the Doctor's side by the end, and he's one of the people who's like, trying to stop the war from happening by the end, because he realizes the folly that would take, and he stops the Doctor from getting crushed by that rubble, which is a nice moment. He doesn't die. It probably would have been more narratively cohesive if he had.
Yeah.
Incidentally, all three of the cliffhangers in this episode, garbage.
Yeah, they're not great.
Cliffhanger number one is the scanner thing is going towards the Doctor, and then, oh, never mind, he can just cover his face and it's fine. And then it kills someone else, and that's it. That's enough to trick the system because it's only got one shot. That was weird. Cliffhanger number two, the robots are going to kill Jamie, and they say he's going to die, and then they stop themselves.
Cliffhanger 3 is the rocks falling, isn't it?
Yeah, the rocks fall on the Doctor, and then he's fine.
Which that like as far as like a scene in the end, that's probably the most tense because you think, yeah, even the Doctor, how is he going to survive a rocks falling on his head? But then they basically just say, oh yeah, no, just a couple of, no broken bones or anything. So
yeah, he's okay.
That's a little odd. I found it funny that the Doctor says, "Oh, I'm not a doctor of medicine, Zoe." So I don't know whether that's been established or whether he learned how to be, a doctor of medicine before then, but after then, excuse me. But
one thing I will point out, it's made clear early on that the Krotons' disintegrator beams or whatever they are don't really affect matter or material, because we see the necklace or whatever that Axis was wearing. No, Abu was wearing. When he gets disintegrated, that thing is fine.
Mm-hmm.
But then they try to attack the TARDIS with it. So, like, they established that it wouldn't affect raw materials, and then they say that it can. That bit was a bit confused. But more to the point, is this the first time that the HADS has been a thing or introduced?
Yes, this was the first time that the HADS had been established. Okay. It was actually one of the reasons why I initially wanted to look at this story, because I know it comes back later on.
It does come back a couple of times in the revived era. You would think that would be a far better place for a cliffhanger, right? Like, the TARDIS has been destroyed by these things. Oh no, what are we going to do? And then in very classic Who fashion, oh no, there's this thing, and it's fine. I think there would have been a much stronger cliffhanger than the Doctor being crushed by some rubble.
Yeah, it's strange that
we're both really struggling right now.
Well, it's one of, again, I know I've said this several times, but it's one of those things where there's nothing that I can think that is terribly, like, bad or offensive, but that's kind of not great because there's not a lot to say about this story.
I mean, at the very least, it's gonna make for a shorter listening experience, and that for some people that's going to be more palatable. But like, it really just kind of exists, and it's there, and it's good.
Yeah.
But like, it doesn't. Like I said before, it's not really trying to say anything too important or profound.
Yeah.
It's not trying to teach any valuable life lessons. It's not trying to reinvent the sci-fi genre. It's there to be a good Doctor Who episode.
Yeah, and good sci-fi rom.
Yeah, and I think I've learned that this is the shortest Second Doctor story.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean,
I'm not sure. There may be a couple of other 4-parters. I think, or maybe the rest are all 5 or 6-parters. I'm not quite sure, but apart from the War Games. But if it was the shortest, it wouldn't surprise me. And I think, I don't know. Like, I know we're kind of struggling to say a lot because, like, stuff happens, but not, and it's not even. Like, I'm remembering good chunks of it, but I'm not remembering the whole narrative as being, particularly memorable. You know what I mean?
No, 100%. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's an episode that, you'll watch and you'll enjoy. But I'm not sure how much of an impression it'll leave.
Yeah. And here's the curious thing. So, the main reason I know about this story is because I saw clips of it on a documentary on Doctor Who that I have on one of my DVDs. I think it was the documentary Who's Doctor Who, which came out in 1976. It was basically celebrating the fact that Doctor Who had been on the air for 13 years, and it was quite interesting. There are a couple of clips from this story, and it was the HADS bit, and the bit where the Doctor's taking the test. And those bits were actually pretty memorable. And I enjoyed them, and I thought, oh, okay, well, for those moments alone, why don't we check out this story? Here's the thing, though. they're kind of the most memorable parts of the whole story, because the rest of it is just kind of there. And I now realize, that's why they picked those specific moments to put in the documentary, because the rest of it is just kind of, again, it's there. There's stuff happening, but it's not, I don't know, super, super interesting. And here's the thing, even if you argue that they are sort of wrestling with some sort of serious themes of, like, slavery and, to an extent, and, like, 1984 sort of themes, like, one, it's not as if these themes haven't been explored in Doctor Who before and done better. And two, like, they explore similar themes in other forms of sci-fi, so yeah, you gotta wonder, what's this story really doing beyond those little moments and some of those themes. There is one more thing I want to bring up, and this is a bit of a plot hole that I noticed. It's more of a world building issue, and it didn't ruin the story for me, but I think I even noticed it either during or right after the first time I watched this. So it's established that there's been some sort of ecological catastrophe, like like acid rain or something, and the whole planet is basically like a charred rock. And I'm pretty sure it might have been Beta who specifically said, it's established nothing grows in the Forbidden Zone at all.
Yeah.
How do these people eat? How do they drink? How do they survive? And if it's the Krotons providing this, if it's the Krotons, sort of, to put it one way, like feeding the livestock, you know what I mean?
Well, actually, it's clearly not the entire planet that's like that, right? Because there are houses, and they do like the house that Vanna is sent to after she is rendered catatonic. That is clearly like out in the open, right? There's like there's a doorway that leads to the outside. So there's clearly parts of the planet that aren't a wasteland.
Yeah, actually, I guess that makes sense. Because I think they even say at some point that, we want to go back to the learning center. It's like, the quickest way is through the wasteland.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
Maybe there are other places. But I feel like if that's true, they should have made it clearer, because I just kept thinking by the end of the story, it's like, okay, the Krotons are gone. They're the only people who I assume are feeding you and giving you water and all that. What are you going to do now? Like, the Doctor, it's kind of like what Margaret said. The Doctor's just kind of left chaos in his wake.
Well,
what are you going to do now, Gons?
Another interpretation I have is it's another part of the learning machines suppressing the Gons' ability to think. Because, like, clearly the Doctor and their crew travel through the wasteland several times and they don't die. So it can't be as bad as they've been led to believe,
yeah.
Yeah, so I think... Yeah, they clearly get food some way. I haven't really thought about it before this point. But, like, the fact... There's got to be different parts of the planet that are... hospitable enough for crops to grow.
Yeah.
It's not an orphan planet. It's not Orphan 55. Stuff grows out there.
Yeah. But yeah, I just think, again, they could have just made that a bit clearer. They could have even taken care of it with a bit of exposition, because I understand, again, late 60s Doctor Who, how much of a planet could they really have afforded to show. But yeah, that was just something that stuck out in my mind. But yeah, overall, this is... I mean, I said this about Boomtown as a joke, but, like, with this episode, genuinely, it is an episode. A story, rather. It is a Doctor Who story. It is a story that exists.
Yeah, it doesn't really go beyond that, does it? And it's not bad.
No, it doesn't. There's nothing frustrating. This isn't like Boomtown or Legend of the Sea Devils or Attack of the Cybermen or anything like that. But it just...
I mean, to that point, I can kind of understand why the script was passed over by the BBC when it was submitted on its own, right? Like, it is a sci-fi story, and it functions as one, but there's nothing groundbreaking or relatively refreshing about it. It just exists, and it is, and it's fine, and it's about a 6 out of 10.
Yep, yeah. I'm gonna go... actually, No, I'm gonna go with a 6
Yeah,
too.
I considered a 5 as well, but I thought no, I definitely like it more than I don't.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
giving it a 5, I don't think is.
yeah. It's like the bits that I like, and the bits that aren't as great, I just nothing them. If that makes
Yeah,
sense.
they're not bad moments. They're just moments that exist and
Yeah.
serve to, be the sci-fi tropes that they are, but
Mm.
more than anything
Mhm.
else, which is nothing
Mhm.
again.
Mm.
Is that? Are we done then? I feel like we
I
barely
think so.
discussed
I
the
think
episode, but it's weirdly that's what this episode deserves.
yeah. There's because again, it's not even that things aren't happening. It's not even the same thing as with the Time Meddler, where I felt like the pacing really started to drag at certain points because there's stuff happening,
Yeah,
but it just doesn't. It just doesn't stick out as anything like super interesting. Certainly not in the context of even classic Who generally. So yeah,
I don't know.
it is what it is.
Maybe it's because we've just recorded the Boomtown episode, and that one was so overwhelmingly negative. That by contrast, something that is good kind of seems like
Hmm.
you know like nothing. And many people would say they'd rather take a bad episode, a bad story over a boring story because at least a bad story leaves an
Yeah.
impression. Not
Yeah.
the case in this instance. Like I said, there was a lot of really good stuff in
Mm.
this episode. Patrick
Mm.
Troughton's performance is really, really great. The companion dynamic is really entertaining and fun to watch. A lot of the side characters have their moments. The Krotons, their plots. I mean, it's a nice bait and switch that it's not some
Mm.
overwhelmingly malicious keep the inhabitants of the planet down so we can stay in charge plot. They're just trying to get home. That's refreshing, I guess. But like, which this episode didn't really leave an impression. Boomtown left a bad taste in my mouth. I'd rather watch this episode over Boomtown any day of the week.
Fair enough.
I'm just putting this out there because I don't know what kind of listening experience this podcast is going to be going back on it, and people might be thinking this episode has clearly left you guys drained and confused and exhausted. Why are you saying it's a 6? That's just what it is. I don't know what to tell you. If you want to like watch the episode and then listen back to this podcast and tell us that we're wrong about this approach that we're taking, what can you say about it?
It's the Krotons.
It's the Krotons. And next week, we're back in the revived era with the first part of the 2-part finale, Bad Wolf.
Yay.
We will be tackling the 2-part finale in separate episodes because they're both incredibly distinct from each other. And so much happens that we feel like we have to do them separately to do them any justice.
Yeah, sure.
Until then, I've been Alex.
I've been Fitz.
And it's the Krotons.
Yep.
It's good. It's fine. Whatever.
Mm-hmm. 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 Mm-hmm.